Thank you. Next time we do this, let's do it in a warmer time. Holy cow. That was a shock to the system last night when I landed here. It's cold. I happen to take cold wherever I go. I own a pecan farm in Georgia. And I was there about 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago, and I pull into town and I get to the hotel, and the clerk at the hotel desk says, "Now you have some snacks with you, right?" I said, "No." That was kind of an odd question for a hotel clerk to ask me. She said, "Well, it's supposed to snow tonight. This is southern Georgia, and they're going to shut everything down." I thought, yeah, I come from snow country. You don't shut everything down. You just drive a little slower. Well, it was a record snow, just like this is a record cold. It snowed 5 inches in southern Georgia, and they literally shut everything down. And when I say shut everything down, nothing moved. So I take cold, bad weather with me wherever I go. I apologize, okay? I want to do a shout out to NutriDrip. I've been dealing with drip systems for 30 plus years. In the West, we do it a lot on high value crops. And the ability as we grow in agriculture, as we try to improve yield and efficiency and all those things, the greatest thing we have to deal with is the delivery of water. How are we going to deliver water? It's the #1 fertilizer, and I'm going to put it there. It's the #1 fertilizer that we put on crops, okay? It carries nutrients with it, even as natural water, but more importantly, the reaction of the soil and the plant to that water and how we do it and the volume we do it with, the guys at NutriDrip are on the leading edge of that. I'm going to give a shout out to what they're doing, because I believe it's really important, not just for today's agriculture, but for the future of agriculture. Water is becoming one of our limiting factors, not just the availability of water, but the quality of water and how we can treat that water and how that improves the plant system is, to me, one of the most important research areas of agriculture today. So one of the things I want to talk about today is how plants take up nutrients, okay? It's a passion of mine. It's my life study, is nutrient movement in the soil and nutrient movement in the plant. One of the first questions I want to ask you is this. What is the first reaction of photosynthesis? We get paid for photosynthesis. The sun gives us energy, okay? And there are reactions that take place in the plant. And one of the things I want to try to move our thought process is, if that is the most important reaction in our business, photosynthesis, what are the reactions or the results of that reaction? And when I ask this question, most people say, well, the first reaction of photosynthesis is production of carbohydrates. That's almost correct, But actually, the first reaction of photosynthesis is charge. It releases an electron. And that electron moves down an electron chain and causes all these reactions of starch production and sugar production and protein production. It starts with sunlight energy warming up that leaf and releasing electrons. And those electrons are charged. And I'm going to ask you to hold that and think about that. They are charged. And that charge drives our world. It drives our world. Everything that we do is a result of that single reaction of charge movement. Okay? All right. So how is that important to us? Well, so let's think about a couple of other things. These are the 16 basic elements that cause plants to grow. And they all have one thing in common. They all carry a charge. When you buy a fertilizer, it carries a charge. The highest volume fertilizer that you purchase is nitrogen. So let's take a step back and think about nitrogen. 78% of the air that you breathe is nitrogen. 78% of the air that corn plant sits in every day is nitrogen. Why do you buy and spend so much time worrying about nitrogen? If the air that you breathe is 78% nitrogen, why do you spend so much money and so much time worrying about nitrogen fertilizer? The reason is because the nitrogen in the air is not charged. It is not charged. So we go through the Haber-Bosch process, those big nitrogen plants, and we take air from nitrogen and react it with an oxidizer, and we get nitrate or ammonia fertilizer. 80% of all the synthetic nitrogen made in the world goes to agriculture. And that is because of this slide right here. It must carry a charge. So I'll take a step back and start with our initial reaction, which is photosynthesis, sunlight energy. We create this charge as that electron chain gets going. And then we deal with nutrients that plant takes up. That is charged as well. That becomes important in the following manner, okay? When you go to your soil test, when you're analyzing this year's fertilizer budget and fertilizer application, you think about fertilizer in terms of pounds per acre. That's how our brain thinks, that's how we've been taught, that's how everything works. What I'm going to ask you to start thinking about is not just pounds per acre, but charge per acre. That's really, really critical, because the charge per acre determines the success of the fertilizer that you apply. The frustration for all of us is spending all that money on fertilizer and not getting the result we want. Why is that? Nobody intentionally makes a bad fertilizer. Nobody says, I'm going to make a fertilizer that only works 50% of the time. That's not the case. As you all know, there are reactions in the soil that cause inefficiencies or lack of success. There are things in the environment that cause all that to happen. What I'm trying to get to is the number one thing that affects the success of your fertilizer is the charge balance, okay? Let's go one step further. I'm trying to figure out the pointer. Yeah, here we go. The next most important thing to understand is this right here. As a plant grows, that charge that we are talking about must be 50-50. 50% positive and 50% negative. So as that plant is growing and you're fertilizing, you are affecting that 50-50 balance. And here's what is important about 50-50 balance. If through our fertilizer program, if through the environment, if through our water program, we have a tendency to over-apply a negative charge, that plant will stop doing everything else it is doing. It will stop making kernels, it will stop filling those kernels, it will stop making leaves to achieve 50-50 balance. That is why understanding plant charge balance and how that relates to your nutritional program, your fertilizer program, affects the very efficiency of that program. Let me take a step back here and just take a little diversion for just a minute. I am not talking about just average corn yields. I'm talking about the ability to move your corn yields to the next level. That's what this is about. If continuing to do things as you are is where you want to be, this may not be of interest. If getting to the next level of corn yield with the same fertilizer budget and the same fertilizer dollar is meaningful, this might be of interest. Why? Because all we're simply doing is altering the ratios or what we blend with that fertilizer so that that 50-50 balance does not come at the cost of yield. Remember, 50-50 balance is king. It will always win over every other reaction in the plant because charge balance is what drives everything. We start with photosynthesis and electrical charge, and that electrical charge must maintain 50-50, okay? One more very important thing to understand. You gotta push the right button or I'll get shocked. We all focus on nitrogen. We all relate corn yield to nitrogen, okay? 80% of imbalance in plants comes from application of synthetic nitrogen. We put on all this nitrogen, and as you all know, and as research has proven year after year after year, 80% of all the nitrogen that a plant takes up, I don't care what form you put on synthetically, is in the form of nitrate nitrogen. Nitrate nitrogen carries a negative charge. So I have all of this negatively charged nitrate nitrogen. I'm not knocking that, I'm just stating some facts. Going into my plant, what am I doing to balance that negative charge? What am I doing to help that plant so that as it takes up that nitrogen, it is metabolizing? As it takes up that nitrogen, it is not being sacrificed or reducing the metabolism so that it has to deal with charge balance. That's incredibly important if we're talking about efficiency and getting our yields to the next level. A couple of things that you all have already accepted. If I'm at 250 units of nitrogen for 250 bushel of corn, if I just simply go out and put on 400 units of nitrogen, am I going to get 400 bushel of corn? Absolutely not. It doesn't work that way. We have maximized the application of nitrogen versus yield. How do we get it to the next level? Because you've all heard about the yield contest and all the guys growing 500, 600 bushel corn. How are they doing it? One of the things they're doing is dealing with plant charge balance. They also go in different areas and all the things that happen, but one of the things that they are doing is not applying just more nitrogen. They are balancing by charge the fertilizer that they are utilizing, okay? Okay. So how is this measured? I'm a big fan of measurement. I'm really excited to hear the next presentation talking about tools of measurement. One of the things that we're working on is this is actually a physical measurement. There's a lot of research been going on about plant charge balance over the last 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. We've been a part of that, okay? And one of the goals is, now that we understand how critical this is, we also have to understand how to measure it. In a month, I'm flying to France to work with a company out of France that actually has a tool that they've been working on, that we've been collaborating with them with, that you'll actually be able to measure the charge balance in your soil, the charge balance in your plant, and then fertilize accordingly. What do I blend with that fertilizer to make it have a more negative charge because my plant needs more negative charges? Or what do I blend with my fertilizer to give the plant more positive charge because I've over-applied nitrogen? Those are the things of the future of plant nutrient fertilization that are incredibly important, and what we're excited about is it's a measurable number. It's a real number. And we know what that number should be. That number should be in millivolts, about 400 millivolts. And as you approach 400 millivolts, you optimize nutrient utilization in plants. If I'm too high, then the plant is producing too much oxidative stress and it slows down. If I'm too low, I'm not photosynthesizing enough and it's not capable of keeping up. So putting on nutrients or putting on additives that help balance that out optimizes the fertilizer, the expensive fertilizer that you are purchasing. Okay? When we talk about nutrients and we talk about fertilizers and how to think about fertilizers, here's how we think. I wanted to share this slide and let you know how we think, and we think it's very critical, okay? As we think about them, as we formulate our nutrient solutions, we first of all talk about movement. It's one thing to put a fertilizer on the soil, but to be efficient with that fertilizer, it has to move. Otherwise, I better be really good at putting it exactly where it needs to be in exactly the right amount. If it can move, that makes it much more efficient. It has to be absorbed. Just because you put a nutrient on in the soil does not mean it's automatically going to get to the plant. Whoa, I didn't want to do that. I'm pushing buttons here. Oh, sorry. You're trying to mess with me, okay. Just because you put a nutrient on in the soil does not mean it's going to be absorbed into the root. The way to make a fertilizer more efficient is to put additives in that help with root absorption. Okay? The third thing is once it gets inside of the root, it still has to move. So I want you to think about this for just a minute. I have soil chemistry. You're all familiar with soil chemistry. You take a soil test. I've now taken that nutrient from the soil solution and put it into the plant. I have a totally different chemistry. I've just switched gears into a totally different chemistry makeup. I've got to be able to make sure that that plant makes it from point of absorption, the root, to point of need, the leaf, where photosynthesis then metabolizes it and then pushes it out as a compound. So it has to move in the soil, it has to be absorbed, and then it has to move into the plant. Once it gets in the plant, I want you to think about it. It goes through all these barriers. It goes through the root membrane. Then it moves in the vascular system. Then it gets to the cell, and it has to go through a cell membrane. And then once it's in the cell membrane, it has to go through a whole different set of reactions. That is all things that we have to think about if we're going to think about increasing the efficiency and the output of the fertilizers that we apply. When we formulate a fertilizer, we literally follow it from application in the soil through the plant and to the root. We have methods that we can do that. And the fertilizers that we are producing can accomplish those very things. It's why our fertilizer application rates are so low. Okay? University of Illinois did a study 2 years ago, I believe now, 2 or 3 years ago, about nitrogen and nitrogen uptake by corn. Anybody familiar with this study? Less than 30% of the applied nitrogen fertilizer that you purchase ever makes it into the plant. I want that to sink in for just a minute. 1/3 is all you get out of nitrogen fertilizer. Wow. Wow. Can we get better? Absolutely. Absolutely we can get better. By improving the movement in the soil and the metabolism in the plant. We absolutely can get better. Okay? So those are things as we talk about plant nitrogen or plant nutritional balance, the positive and negative charges in plants, and then how that relates to our fertilizer program. Those are the things that we must be considering to get to the next level of yield, agronomy, etc. Okay? Okay. All of you in high school took biology, I assume. Okay? This is what you learn. This is the basic metabolic cycle of a plant. Okay? We talk about photosynthesis, sunlight energy, we get charge, water balance, all these things, and eventually we get to a carbohydrate. Then we get to an amino acid and a protein, and then we get to leaves and roots and corn kernels and flowers and all the things that we visually see in a plant. Okay? One of the things that happened when I first started 30 plus years ago was the discovery of this pathway. We've always known about it. We didn't know how important it was. It's called the phenylpropanoid pathway, secondary plant metabolism. These are all the secondary compounds that we visually don't really take into account, but are incredibly important, okay? So far, there's been identified over 10,000 of these different types of compounds, phenolic compounds, ketones, lipids, terpenes, etc., okay? These are the things that affect plant charge balance. These are the things that affect kernel fill. This secondary metabolic pathway is incredibly important in the next step. So here's what I'm trying to say. With our traditional fertilizer programs, with our NPK programs that you are using right now that are just bulk fertilizer that we're throwing out there at pounds and pounds, hundreds of pounds per acre, that affects this pathway. And we have maximized that out. There's no more putting on more fertilizer and automatically getting more yield. That just won't happen, okay? We've maximized what we know about that and how we're going to get yield out of that. It is when we start affecting this pathway that we will now move yields to the next level. So I want you to understand something that's very important in this discussion. How do I affect this pathway? How do I turn this pathway on? by affecting the rate of nitrogen in my plant. Excess nitrate nitrogen turns this pathway off. Now wait a minute. If this pathway helps metabolize, if this pathway helps with plant charge balance, and yet nitrate nitrogen is so important, how do I put those two together? I am talking about excess. It is when the plant is storing excess nitrogen, and you've all seen this, where I get vegetative growth and no yield. I get a 25-foot tall corn stalk, no ears. That is because I have excess nitrate nitrogen, and this phenylpropanoid pathway is almost completely inactive. As I balance plant charge, as I reduce nitrate nitrogen in the plant and turn it into proteins and amino acids, this pathway can become highly active, and it can affect kernel filth. It can affect starch production. It can affect sugar production. All because I am now balancing my plant and I don't have this excess charge of nitrate nitrogen that throws everything else into imbalance. This is really, really critical for us. This is the focus of study of Redox Bio-Nutrients is this pathway and how we affect this pathway. The utilization of synthetic fertilizer, again, I'm going to say it, we have maximized that dollar. I'm talking about getting to the next level of yield, and the focus on this phenylpropanoid pathway and plant charge balance is how we're going to get there. It's how we're getting there currently, okay? By the way, I just gave you in 20 minutes, I gave you an entire semester of biochemistry. Congratulations. This is a lot, guys. This is really deep stuff, and nobody likes chemistry, and nobody likes all this stuff. But you're in the chemistry business. You're in the energy business, whether you like it or not. And to get to the next level, a basic understanding of these principles is really important, okay? I hated chemistry in high school. Hated it. Some days I still do. Redox Active Substrates. This is really important, and these are the additives now that we're talking about that Redox Bio-Nutrients really, really focuses on. Natural plant extracts that deal with what are called Redox Active Substrates. The term redox is that's not a name unique to us. Redox is a biochemical reaction. The name of our company came from the fact that we focus on biochemical reaction based on redox chemistry, okay? Redox active substrates are substrates that can absorb or give off a charge. There are literally organic molecules, naphthoquinones are an example of that can either absorb a charge or can give off a charge all in the same time. So if plant charge balance becomes something very important to me, if balancing charge in a plant will help me improve yield or fertilizer efficiency, making additives that help that is critically important, and that's what Redox Active Substrates do, okay? They deal with chemistry, they deal with absorbing destructive molecules, so oxidative stress is something that you're starting to hear more and more discussed in agriculture all the time. We've been dealing with that for 30 years. We absorb destructive molecules that destroy cells, okay? All of this related to redox active chemistry and the ability to deal with plant charge balance. Our technology, okay? One of the things we do is natural plant extracts, okay? They're so powerful. The pharmaceutical industry itself is really focusing now on botanical plant extracts because those molecules in very small quantities are very, very powerful, okay? I'm stuck. Thank you. Thank you. One of the things I want to talk about very, very quickly is you deal with companies that deal with naturally extracted molecules. That's a very hard thing to do. It's very hard to take these plant extracts that we get from specific plant species where we've identified the molecules that we want and run them through an extraction process and get a consistent result. Redox Bio-Nutrients is one of the few companies in this space that is ISO 9001 certified. That's really important to us, and it should be really important to you, because what that ISO certification means is that our product quality from input to output is guaranteed every single time. We actually allow a certifying body to come in and go through our manufacturing processes, go through everything we do. They sit and observe our people working and acting, and they take down notes, give us suggestions for improvement twice a year. This is an outside body that literally comes in and they can do whatever they want to make sure that A, we are guaranteeing our product, and B, we're doing exactly what we say we do. So ISO certification is really important to us. Okay? Okay, let me talk about how we get where we are, okay? Because y'all deal with this, or you're starting to deal with this. We do a process that is common to chemistry, but we focus on our extraction process. It's called fractionation. That takes molecules, organic molecules that are very complex, and breaks them down into their simpler form so that they are more easily absorbed or more easily reactive in nutrient solutions. So when you take a traditional product, they go through a very basic process, and they do not deal with breaking down these molecules. They give you very large molecules that can or can't be reactive. We go through a multi-step process where we'll take, for example, in the case of humic acid, we go through a 5-step extraction. And we literally know the molecule size we want, we know the structure of the molecule we want, and we extract that molecule, put it in a tank, do that to 5 different sets of molecules, and then reassemble that into a product. Why? Because science has proven that 40% of everything extracted out of lenardite is completely unusable by a plant. In fact, in some cases, it's negative to a plant. We want to eliminate that and never deliver it to you. We only want to deliver to you active organic molecules. So our fractionation process, in the end, is a group of molecules that are very, very highly active in soil and in plant that help with plant charge balance. Do the same thing with our botanical extracts. We have identified parts of specific plants. One of my patents is the extraction of certain compounds from a black walnut pole. That compound is highly, highly reactive. It's being researched right now at several universities across the country for its reactivity in plant charge balance. We do that by fractionation and by identifying what parts of specific plant species we want to give this natural molecule extraction that is then able to be utilized in nutrient solutions. Okay? Do the same thing in our amino acid extraction process. I don't want just amino acids. I want the amino acids that are plant active. I want the amino acids that will give me plant charge balance. I want amino acids that will help my nutrient solution be more active and more productive. Okay? And again, I re-emphasize, the application of just synthetic NPK has been maxed out. You're not going to get more yield by putting on more NPK. You are going to get more yield by combining your NPK with these types of molecules, because these types of molecules deal with the very important point that I'm trying to make, which is plant charge balance. Okay? We deal with complexing. That is where we take and make sure that our nutrients are, the charge doesn't react in the soil so it gets tied up. You've heard those terms before. And we deal with chelation, same thing, so that our micronutrients don't get tied up in the soil. They actually make it and move through the soil and into the plant. Okay? We'll take a minute now and talk about one particular technology that we are very, very, very excited about. It's a product we call RDXN. It has 3 different botanical extracts in it, okay? And we are very excited about this because different than anything you are currently dealing with, this is a plant active molecule. So when you talk about nitrogen utilization, when you talk about nitrogen efficiency, you're dealing with molecules that either A, don't allow for the breakdown of your ammonia in the soil over time, or B, deal with biological organisms in the soil that produce nitrogen. Not interested in either one of those. I am trying to deal with the nitrogen once it gets to the plant so that it metabolizes in the plant better, and I don't get excess nitrogen in the plant to affect all of the processes in the plant. That is what is so exciting about this particular material. We're dealing with nitrogen optimization, okay? 25 to 50% nitrogen optimization. We've been doing this for 10 plus years, and this product is now for the first time commercially available. Why is that? Why 10 years? Number one, because that's just what we do. We thoroughly vet our molecules and our products before we commercially introduce them. But number two, once we realized the effectiveness of this particular molecule, I actually got really scared. I'll be honest with you. I actually got really scared because it's not lost on me what I'm saying. I am saying up to 50% reduction in nitrogen with the same yield. No yield loss. Why is that important? Because now, because I'm not overloading the plant with excess nitrate nitrogen, I get better kernel fill. I have less disease pressure. I have less insect pressure because all of excess nitrate nitrogen contributes to all of those problems. If we can't metabolize the nitrogen as it sits in the plant, it accumulates and creates significant issues for plant growth. It reduces fill and increases disease and insect pressure. Y'all know that already. How do you deal with that? Right now, we deal with that by applying an insecticide, by applying a fungicide, by applying all sorts of those types of products. I'm not knocking that. I'm saying, as was said very well by Tim, let's go to the cause. Let's go to the cause. What's the cause? The cause of many of those problems is the over-application of synthetic nitrogen that leads to nitrogen storage in the plant that brings on those problems in the first place. This product is plant active, so the nitrogen in your plant is metabolized better. It's technology we're very excited about, and we're now commercially introducing it. We have 4+ years of commercial research in the Midwest. I'm not going to go over that research. That's for Zach, my partner here. Zach can talk about that individually with each one of you. I'm just simply introducing the concept of the technology to you because we're very, very, very excited about it. Okay? It deals with this pathway. It deals with accelerating the phenylpropanoid pathway so that that nitrate nitrogen in your plant is better metabolized. I think I'm done. I didn't take up near enough time, but I'm done. Okay? Any questions, guys? That was a lot. If you didn't like your high school biochemistry teacher, you really don't like me. Okay. Yeah?
Isn't that going to be pretty variable in the soil?
I'm sorry?
Isn't that going to be pretty variable in the soil and the plants?
Well, because it's plant active, it deals with the nitrogen you're applying. So notice, I'm not saying zero nitrogen. That's not the point here. The nitrogen that you apply, as it moves along and we stimulate those metabolic pathways simply metabolize that nitrogen better. That's all that it's doing. We're trying to figure out exactly what pathway, but it is based on synthetic nitrogen application. I'm not trying to create nitrogen, I'm trying to metabolize the nitrogen you're utilizing. So we've done it everywhere from someone using 100 units of nitrogen, we've cut it back to 50, got the same result. Someone using 200 units of nitrogen, we've cut it back to 100, got the same result because of nitrogen metabolism efficiency. That's all we're talking about here. So what you guys are used to is, I get a variable in the soil, I use these live organisms, not knocking them, but I use these live organisms. That is variable from soil type to soil type. That is variable from environment to environment. This takes all of that away and simply deals with the plant. We've done it on 13 different plants. It's not just corn. We've done it on lettuce. We've done it on tomatoes. We've done it on potatoes. We've done it on onions. We've done it on apples. It is metabolizing the nitrogen better. That's all that it's doing. Great question. Fantastic question. Any other question? Yeah, please.
Yeah, so besides your 9001 certification, what makes Redox's carbon the best, I guess?
Our process of fractionation, how we handle those molecules, okay? And the ratio or blend of molecules that we utilize. Okay, that's a great question, is why are we different? Number one, we have several patented processes, okay? So It's not just the molecule. We actually have process patents where we've actually invented machinery that how to handle that molecule delicately so I'm not destroying it in my extraction process. Or when I put it into a jug, it's stable. Okay? All of those things are what make us, we've been doing this for 30 years. We're not new to this game at all. We're new to the Midwest. So I cut my teeth managing the world's largest fresh fruit production farm in California. 15,000 acres of grapes, kiwis, lemons, oranges, apples. That was my first job out of college. And I kind of stayed in that industry. So we've been doing this on the West Coast and in the Southeast for a long, long time on specialty crops. When we came up with this technology of nitrogen optimization, we really got excited about the Midwest. We really got excited because we feel like we have something that we can really add to your product portfolio that is really going to make a difference in what you're doing. Okay, so thank you for that question. That's a really good question. Yeah?
If you've applied fall anhydrous and then put this in furrow for your planter, is it still going to have the same effect, or do you need to have your nitrogen with it?
That's a really, really good question. Yeah, I'll repeat the question. So if I put on fall anhydrous, and then I put this on in furrow in the spring, will it affect nitrogen metabolism? The answer is yes, it will. Okay, why? Because there's a process in plants that was discovered in 1998 by a German plant physiologist. And it's called plant priming. Okay, maybe some of you have heard of this. And that is where when I put a molecule or put some stimulant on the plant, and I turn on this pathway, that pathway stays active. That pathway stays active. So the compounds in RDXN are stimulatory by nature. They're considered a biostimulant. And so when I have my nitrogen, and then in the spring, when I in furrow and that root goes out and assimilates that stimulatory product, that nitrogen metabolic pathway is turned on. So as that plant takes up nitrogen, it's much more efficient in the utilization of that nitrogen. The majority of our research in the Midwest has been mixing it with nitrogen. I'll be straightforward about that. But we have several tests now in the last year where we have done separate applications and we've gotten the same result. We are working on a formulation right now to mix it with dry fertilizer. Our formulation, that's a different formula. We've got to do things a little bit differently. And I just got some results yesterday that look very, very promising. Okay? This is about making the synthetic nitrogen that you are applying more efficient by reducing nitrate nitrogen levels in your leaf tissue. I'm not trying to get rid of it, I'm trying to make it more efficient because that nitrate nitrogen sitting there, if you understand the nitrogen metabolic pathway, plants can't utilize nitrate nitrogen. They have to convert it to NH2, ammonia. As long as it sits there as nitrate nitrogen, that's all it's going to be. It's only when the metabolic process, this process kicks into gear and converts that nitrate nitrogen to ammonia that then I get amino acids and proteins and corn and all those things that we're trying to grow and get paid money for. Sitting there as just nitrate nitrogen does nothing. Okay? Now, do I need a certain base level to keep the system going? Yes. I'm not talking about zero. I'm talking about the efficiency of what you're already doing. That's what we're improving. Okay? Great question. Yeah, go ahead.
So basically what you're saying is this product kind of helps stop overloading the system up front.
That's exactly right.
Because I feel like in a dryland situation around here, we're all kind of forced to overload up front because we do a top dress application later. It may not rain. So
we have done single-use applications, and this stays throughout the season because of plant priming. Okay, plant priming is the key. Once I turn this metabolic pathway on, it stays on. Okay, so we've done single-season planting applications, and that nitrogen effect stays throughout the season. Yeah, very good question. And the whole goal is so that you don't have to overload the system in the first place. So if I'm more efficient with my nitrogen, up to 50%, I'm overloading the plant less, I get better efficiency and better plant growth. Okay? Yeah, great question. Great question.
My question is, did you try it with manures?
Yeah, we're getting there. Sorry. I know this is a manure area, and I made a presentation in another area that was talking about manures, and I know that's a thing. I want to say this. I'll just throw this out there. This is not scientific. I want to say that once we turn this pathway on, I don't care where the nitrogen comes from. I want to say that. I will admit we have not done that specific research, okay? But I want to say it just makes sense to me in my head. Once I turn this pathway on, I don't care if it's urea, I don't care if it's ammonium nitrate, I don't care if it's anhydrous, I don't care if it's calcium nitrate, potassium, I don't care. It doesn't seem to me it would make any difference if it comes from manure. That's my logical thinking, but I have not done that. We are planning this year to do that research. I just haven't done it yet. Okay? Great question. Great question.
Darin, can you go through the, when we're more efficient with our nutrients, that's going to get more quality of roots. The quality of roots, how that affects nutrient uptake.
Thank you for that, Zach. Zach's my partner in crime, okay, and he's smarter than I am, okay? One of the issues that happens when I increase nitrate nitrogen in leaf tissue is what? This is a scientific fact. Universities here in the Midwest have done this research. The higher the nitrate level in leaves, the less roots I have. It's an inverse relationship, okay? So when I overload the system, what am I doing? I'm reducing root growth, therefore I reduce water uptake, therefore I create plant stress by simply overloading the system with nitrate nitrogen. I believe in agriculture we have reached a point now where we have reached a level of nitrate toxicity in plants. I think we're overloading the system because I've seen too much the other way now that we've gone down this road of understanding it. I believe over the next 5 years we're going to completely relearn nitrogen utilization and nitrogen application rates in plants. I believe that 100% because we've proven it. We've proven it for now 10 years, 10 plus years, okay? This is about metabolism. This is about taking that hard-earned dollar that you're spending on fertilizer and making it go further, okay? Yes.
Got a question online. Often seen in soybean plants 4 foot tall, very low yields around 30 bushel. Could this be for nitrate nitrogen from previous years' corn fertility program?
Yeah, I firmly believe that. I have residual in this. What do we know evolutionary about plants? The one thing evolutionary about plants is until we created synthetic nitrogen, nitrogen was the most limiting nutrient in plants. So for millions of years, plants evolved with the ability to take up and store nitrogen, and they can't say no. So if I have nitrogen in the soil, that plant's going to take it up, and when it takes it up, it has to store it. What's the storage organ? More leaf tissue area. So I got a 4 foot tall corn soybean plant simply to store nitrogen. If we learn to turn on this pathway, this phenylpropanoid pathway, and in RDXN, there's a molecule specific to nitrogen metabolism. If we learn to turn that on, I can turn that in from storage to reproductive tissue to seed, which is what we all get paid for, okay? One of the interesting things is all the research that A, we're a part of, or B, we're certainly supportive of other people doing. Right now, currently, they've identified over 1,500 genes in the plant that are associated just with nitrogen metabolism. We turn on some of those genes in plants, okay? The study of gene manipulation and of gene pathways is fascinating to me, okay? Because we're just beginning to understand how all of that works. But it's a great question. Residual nitrogen is a problem in any plant. Why? Because it will store it. And when it stores it as leaf tissue, not as reproductive tissue. And you don't get paid, you're not in a crop that gets paid for leaf tissue. You're in a crop that gets paid for seed. I've got to produce more seed, okay? Great question.
Darin, you talked about front-loading. The question over here was about front-loading in one application of the RDXN. Is there a benefit to putting it on multiple
Yes.
times through the growing season? I mean, we've got the delivery system here.
Yes.
We're giving that plant multiple meals, so can you speak to that?
100%. I would rather see this broken up from one large application of 1 to 2 quarts per acre to several smaller applications of pints. Why? Because this system is reactive to the environment. And the more I can poke the bear, if you will, the more I can stimulate that system as the season goes on, the more efficient that system is going to be. So you will get a better result if you can do multiple applications than one single application. And in my estimation, that's true with just about anything, which is why I'm a huge fan of what the NutriDrip guys are doing, is we can talk about water management, but the ability to deliver nutrients at a specific time in a specific way is huge. It's the next evolutionary step in how we're going to get more per acre. It absolutely is. So yeah, it's a great question. and it is absolutely 100% correct. The more I can put on less amounts and stimulate these systems, the more efficient those systems are going to be. Yeah.
You're inspiring more questions. There's some traction in the marketplace to move away from nitrogen to a urea-based or more
Yep.
ammonium-based nitrogen source. You've spoken a lot about nitrate-based. Do you have a similar impact on the ammonium-based?
Yes, so it is in the plant. However that nitrogen is getting in the plant. Here's one of the problems to going to those nitrogen sources, is when I put it in the soil. We did this work 25 years ago at the University of Florida. I can take ammonia-based fertilizer and put it on the soil, but once that soil is metabolically active, so why do you put ammonia on in the fall here? Because the soil isn't metabolically active, because once the soil is metabolically active, I don't care where you're at, from California to New York, I don't care. Once the soil is metabolically active, 80% of that nitrogen turns to nitrate anyway. That's just a problem in the soil, okay? So you can put on nitrification inhibitors. Those are good. You're only getting about 8% efficiency out of that. So that's why we focused on the plant. The reason we focused on the plant is because I can only do so much to control those reactions in the soil. But once it gets to the plant, whether it's as ammonia or as nitrate, I've got to do a better job of metabolizing it, which is what RDX does. So it's a great question. I don't care about the nitrogen source because we've done it with every nitrogen source we could think of, and we get the same effect in the plant, which is nitrogen metabolism. Okay? Yeah?
Hey Darin, does this work on all C4 plants and C3 plants?
Yes. Yes, we've done a variety of plants and a variety. We've done it from the desert Southwest to the very wet Northeast to the Southeast to right here in the Midwest. Most of our research comes from here in the Midwest. We focused on Midwest acreage because it's the highest utilization of nitrogen, and it doesn't matter. It does not matter. Crop does not matter because this metabolic pathway is common to every plant species. The phenylpropanoid pathway, every plant species, C3 or C4, has this pathway, and that's what we're focused on, is this pathway. Great question. Yeah?
So, if I'm right here, we're just focusing primarily on corn. Can you speak to how this responds in the soybean plant?
I can't. Sorry. I can't. I'm going to go to, because we've done it on so many other plants, I'm still working on this pathway. I just can't give you a specific research based on soybeans. I'm just jumping ahead because I've done it on apples, kiwis, cantaloupe, watermelon, pecans. I just haven't done it on soybeans yet. We focused on corn in the Midwest because it's a high nitrogen crop. It's a marketing issue. Yeah. Thank you for the question. Great question.
Okay, online question here. If we are using spring applied 120 pounds of nitrogen per UAN on wheat, will we cause the wheat to go flat if we add RDX in?
No. It is simply metabolizing. So what I'm getting at, why are we using 120 units? Not because you know that that's where the plant needs to go. It's because after years and years of trying, that's your optimization. Well, what we're saying is that optimization is based on just applying nitrogen. When I stimulate this pathway, I'm stimulating 50% more optimization of that nitrogen. You get the same output. Yeah.
So the discussion here has primarily been on RDXN. There's 36 different products.
Correct.
We'll probably spend 36 hours talking about all
Correct.
these different products. I do want you to touch just a little bit on root X.
Yes. Okay. So we have a phosphorus-based material used early on in the growing season, either as a starter or an early season application product, where we've added our botanical extracts, amino acids, and humic acids to it. And it is a highly efficient form of phosphorus. So what's one of the problems with synthetic phosphorus in your soil? We have it a lot in the West, but it's going to happen here too. It affects other nutrients because it is so easy to tie it. I have phosphorus that carries a negative charge, and I have all these positive charged nutrient elements in my soil. Calcium will immediately grind your teeth together. Your teeth are calcium phosphate. So if I have any phosphate in the soil, and I put on phos acid, what am I going to do? I'm going to create calcium phosphate. Okay? Now, in some cases, that's not necessarily terrible, but what I'm saying is you cannot put on just phos acid in a soil that has calcium and not create calcium phosphate. It's one of the biggest problems we have in the western United States in bicarbonate waters, is I get calcium phosphate. Here's the point of Redox. point of Rutex is we take these carbon compounds and we react it with the phosphorus so that it will not tie up with calcium. You can literally mix our phosphorus product with calcium. You don't have another phosphorus product on the planet you can do that with. We do that through our extraction processes because my goal, one of my missions in life is, I'll go back and be a little personal like my friend Tim. My father passed away from cancer when he was very, very young. And he was healthy. He was healthy. And my goal since I started doing this was to create a food supply and a food chain that increased human health. I'm not interested in volume of output. I'm interested in value of output. The value of the crops that we produce. I do that by increasing the efficiency of the inputs that I can put on. So one of my goals is reduction of amount per acre of fertilizer. Because the fertilizers we're using, the traditional, I'm talking about the traditional fertilizers we're using, are highly inefficient. It's the best we know how to do it. It's gotten us to where we are. I'm talking about how do we get to the next level? Because here's the problem you all face. You've got to produce more per acre for the same dollar. That's how you're going to get out of the hole you're in. I can't come to you and say, please spend more and get more. That doesn't make sense. I have a fertilizer budget dollar. How do I improve within that box and get more yield? You can only do that by putting additives on and replacing nutrients and making those nutrients more efficient. That's what we do. So Rutex is a phosphorus-based material that will not tie up with nutrients in the soil and improves phosphorus nutrition in plants, particularly early season phosphorus application. It is not corrosive to equipment. It will not corrode your equipment, and the use rates are very, very low, less than a gallon per acre. Okay? Great question. Thank you for letting me talk about that material. Any other questions? That was a lot, guys. I apologize. That was a huge chemistry lesson, and you can torture me after the show, but I appreciate the opportunity to come here and present. Next year, let's do it in a warmer place. I vote for the Keys in Florida. Okay. Thank you very much.